Hello, friends. Today, we'll be talking about the Necropsy report for Luna, one of our two precious eaglets who passed away this past June. I know this is a tough topic, but I think that it's important that we know and understand about what happened. If you're sensitive to a topic like this animal necropsy, I ask you to please consider the subject matter and use your discretion. There are no photos of the necropsy itself, and if you're unsure about watching, I think that the first minute of the introduction will show the types of diagrams and topics that I will address today. So thank you for joining me today as both you and I navigate this difficult but essential discussion. Let's take a look at what's ahead of us. I have assembled all of the information released by the state and sent through the Friends of the Reading Eagles. I have integrated these with weather data from the state, videos and images from the Friends of the Reading Eagles, and observations from the local ground crew. I don't know of any place with this breadth of information that has been integrated outside of the state lab. I think you'll find it intriguing. Ahead of us today, we'll cover the necropsy observations, and we'll align them with anatomical diagrams. We'll examine the results of toxicology and virology reports. We'll review the state's published cause of death and comments. And finally, in a unique approach, I'm going to integrate all of these data points on a timeline to uncover what truly happened to our two eaglets, Luna and Sol, last June. You'd be asking yourself an important and appropriate question as to who I am and what my background to review this information. Well, I'm not a biologist, but I enjoy the subject, and I do quite a bit of research on these subjects and issues. My background, I have a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. I love data. I'm a numbers nerd, or a data nerd. That's what I call myself. I am an amateur ornithologist. I love eagles. I've been watching Liberty for 17 years, and I first met Terry from the Friends of the Reading Eagles about 15 years ago. I think it's important to establish a few facts about conditions affecting the eaglets in June of 2024. First, the nest tree was dead. It had no leaves and provided only minimal shade to the birds in the nest. Sol and Luna, as a result, they were exposed to direct sun and solar radiation, and those conditions might have raised their body temperatures as much as about 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit during the heat of the day. Luna and Sol appeared outwardly healthy through May of 2024. That's just my personal opinion. To me, they appeared active and their food needs seemed to be met. An 11-day heat wave started June 4th, 2024. Temperatures ranged from 95 up to 107 degrees Fahrenheit, including 6 days from 103 to 107. First, my thanks to the Wildlife Health Laboratory at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They've been very supportive. Second, my notes will show up on the screen, and they are clearly marked. I want to make it known that I accept everything in the state's report, and nothing that I say or write is meant to contradict the state's findings. So let's take a look at the state's necropsy observations. First, of course, we know the species, bald eagle. Luna was, in fact, a female. A portion of the observations noted conditions of her ovaries. The age of the bird is classified as fledgling, of course. My comment is that Luna was aged about 82 days, almost 12 weeks at the time of her death, on or about June 16th, 2024. Let's take a look at the laboratory findings in the report. It states that avian influenza was not detected by PCR testing. It also states that West Nile virus was not detected by PCR testing. In a communication apart from the report, there was a question asked of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife as to the potential presence of rodenticide. The reply to that communication stated that there was no indication of exposure in this eagle, meaning Luna. There's no mention of lead testing in the necropsy report. My opinion regarding that subject is that circumstantial evidence based on the longevity of the adults, Liberty and Guardian, suggests to me that lead is not a strong environmental factor in the food chain here. That's my opinion and not based on testing. Let's take a look at the necropsy observations and gross lesions. Gross lesions are visible abnormalities or damage in an organ or tissue that can be seen without a microscope. So the post-mortem condition of the body was poor to fair, and that's because Luna was found about 48 hours after her death. The state wildlife biologists observed moderate to severe autolysis, and of course I had to look that up too. Autolysis is the destruction of cells or tissues by enzymes. A histologic exam was not possible due to the degraded condition of the remains, limiting diagnostic findings. Other notes were that the eyes were sunken. The eagle weighed 3,200 grams at necropsy. An important statement here, it says that the eagle is in good nutritional condition with abundant fat reserves. We'll talk more about this issue later. And finally, in these observations, it says that no evidence of disease was noted during the necropsy. Another important observation was that the pectoral muscles were minimally developed. Here are my comments about that. There are two types of pectoral muscles. The smaller, darker red one that you see on the diagram is known as the pectoralis muscle. It's responsible for the upstroke movement of a bird's wing. The larger, lighter shaded one is the supracoracoideus muscle. It's responsible for the downstroke of the bird's wing. These muscles combined can account for about 15 to 25% of an eagle's overall weight. Later on, we'll re-examine this issue and discuss why it's so important. The necropsy report states that the kidneys are pale pink. There are no additional explanations or extrapolations on that issue. So I did some research on this. Everything else that I'm going to present here about the kidneys is my opinion. In no way does this represent what the state had to say, and it is not intended to contradict the state's findings. So, That given, the research that I found regarding kidneys being pale pink might have been due to one or more causes. It says that this might have been autolysis. And when I say it says, I mean my research. The autolysis. Remember, that's the decomposition produced by enzymes. So it could have been that, and we know that autolysis was present in other places in the body. The research also says that it could be ischemic damage. This is reduced flow to the kidneys before death, potentially due to shock, dehydration, or cardiovascular disease. And I think once we look at the final determination of cause of death, it sure could have been shock or dehydration. I also looked into aspects as to what might be ruled out based on the fact that the kidneys were pale pink. I found out that we might be able to rule out acute lead poisoning. And again, remember that I presented an opinion about lead poisoning based on longevity of Liberty and Guardian in the territory. The research states that typically lead poisoning would cause kidneys to be swollen, congested, and dark red or purple rather than pale pink. So can lead poisoning be ruled out? Maybe. I just don't know factually. The research also states that severe dehydration might be ruled out. And this one surprised me because remember how hot it was? It says that dehydration would usually cause kidneys to be shrunken, wrinkled, and dark brown or black. The next observation is really important. Well, I guess they're all important. It says that the stomach contains scant vegetation. Notice it's not something like fish or fowl, it's vegetation. So my comments are these. What does it mean or not mean to have a lack of food in the stomach? I was wondering, how long does that mean that Luna hadn't eaten before her death? Based on my research, it's reasonable to estimate that complete digestion of a meal requires around 6 to 12 hours. So could Luna have eaten more than 6 to 12 hours before her death? I think yes, it's possible. And we know that Liberty and Guardian in past years have always provided food to their eaglets on the ground. So again, this is an important observation. We don't know how long Luna hadn't eaten before her death. At least 6 to 12 hours, right? But the wildlife biologist noted that Luna had abundant fat reserves. So to me, it seems less likely that she never ate after leaving the nest. That is, she was probably fed on the ground by the adults up until some point. Otherwise, the level of fat reserves might have dwindled. That is just my opinion. The nest is surrounded by water, and Luna was actually seen across a small portion of water from the nest. A question came up to Fish and Wildlife as to whether Luna might have drowned. The Necropsy report noted that a portion of Luna's feathers were wet. In a communication regarding that question, the state answered that there was no evidence of drowning, with the additional observation that with drowning in birds, you may see water in the air sacs and lungs, but Luna did not have this. So this one is difficult to take. The Necropsy report stated that there is an irregular fracture of the right distal Carpometacarpus, and added that there is some dried blood present in the metacarpal bones. These are the bones toward the very end of the skeletal structure in the bird's wing. For us, these are akin to wrist bones and bones in our palm. This issue is extremely important. The fracture probably made it very difficult for Luna to fly, if not impossible. This diagram shows two very important reasons why we believe Luna couldn't fly. Nobody ever saw her fly, that is, any more than hopping up to a branch in the nest. According to the state's findings, the pectoral muscles were minimally developed, which suggests that the eagle left the nest before it was physically ready. The other reason, of course, is that the eagle had a fracture of the right Carpometacarpus. The state says that the injury might have been sustained when the eagle left the nest, possibly colliding with tree branches and or the ground. And my comment on these issues, nobody that I know knew these issues about Luna. These were internal issues that were discovered during the necropsy. I did some research on what a bald eagle at around 80 to 82 days of age should weigh if it's healthy and ready to fledge. I looked at many sources, and a tip of the cap to elfruler.com, one of my favorite eagle sites. So for a female, looking at these various sources and adjusting for some issues that were noted in the necropsy, I estimated that Luna was probably about 25 to 33% underweight from what she should have weighed if she had been healthy and ready to fledge. There are a myriad of reasons why Luna could have been underweight. These could include dehydration, desiccation, decomposition, and underdevelopment of growth, among others. But in particular, I wanted to know if she might have been dehydrated enough to produce fatal effects. There's absolutely no way that I can apportion the underweight values to specific reasons. It's theoretically possible that at least 15% of the underweight value was due to dehydration. Though based on the state's findings with the kidney, I think it's becoming less likely that the dehydration in itself was at a fatal level in Luna. For Sol, it might have been a different story because he was stuck in the nest. Additionally, there was no mention of Urates in Luna's necropsy, and that is telling. The eaglet who died of stress and dehydration in 2017 had very significant Urates in its necropsy findings, but Luna did not. And what are Urates? They are deposits of uric acid in the body and organs, particularly in the kidneys, liver, and heart. When a bird is dehydrated, its kidneys struggle to properly filter and excrete uric acid, and that's when urates accumulate in the body. So while Luna might have been dehydrated to some degree, the lack of urates suggests to me, again, this is my opinion, that in and of itself, Luna might not have been dehydrated to a fatal level. We'll go over the timeline later, but remember that Sol never left the nest, and Luna had 5 days on the ground next to the river before she died. Witnesses did see Luna drinking from the river, so there's some possibility that she was in the process of recovering or attempting to recover from some stage of dehydration. If you want to see more information regarding Sol and Luna and the potential for dehydration as compared to an eaglet named Solo in 2017. Please refer to my video regarding that subject. It's called Eaglets at Risk, A Race to Survive, and you can see that cover here. Now we'll cover the wildlife biologist's determination of the cause of death and the comments associated with that. Here are the notes directly from the necropsy. The diagnosis for the cause of death is heat stress and trauma related to leaving the nest too early. The eagle appeared to be in good nutritional condition at the time of death, as evidenced by adequate fat reserves. The pectoral muscle was only minimally developed, suggesting the eagle fledged before it was physically ready. No evidence of disease was noted during the gross necropsy, and the eagle tested negative for West Nile virus and avian influenza. The unusually high temperatures in early to mid-June likely caused the eagle to leave its nest before it was physically ready. On June 11th, when the eagle reportedly left the nest, the high temperature was 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Young birds in nests with little shade have few options to escape the heat and direct sunlight. During consecutive days of high heat, conditions in the nest may cause heat stress, and the nestling may fall or jump from the nest when trying to escape the heat. The sibling of this eagle reportedly remained in the nest and died during this period of high heat. Heat stress may contribute to the respiratory and/or cardiovascular strain, dehydration, and/or damage to the organs and gastrointestinal tract. This ends the observations made by the state, unless I specifically note that elsewhere. The balance of this video is based on the facts presented by the state, scientific data, videos, photographs, and witness observations, but I have gathered that and it becomes my opinion. Here's a graphic that I made to list some of the potential symptoms of heat stress and dehydration. For heat stress, symptoms might include panting for thermoregulation. Now, they do that even though they don't have heat stress. So in any warmer temperatures, you will probably see that, though probably more excessively in high heat. For heat stress, you might also see relaxed or drooping wings, ruffled feathers, elevated body temperature, and dehydration. So what are some possible signs of dehydration? They include sunken eyes, and that was noted in the necropsy. Loss of appetite, decreased droppings, weight loss, and lethargy, among others. Now that we know that heat stress was the suspected cause of death, let's look at this graph of high temperatures during that critical time in June, from about June 4th to the 18th. You'll see the heavy black line that goes across the graph. That's the trend of the average daily high temperature in Redding from June 3rd to the 18th. That average high increases from about 89 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. The blue line on the graph is the actual daily high temperature. Much of the blue line is well above the black line. Those are the actual temperatures that Sol and Luna had to endure during the heat wave. Now, how much heat is too much? Let's examine that issue. You'll see the green highlighted area, and that's known as the thermal neutral zone for an eagle. It ranges from 23 degrees Fahrenheit to about 77. The reason that this is important is with temperatures that range from 23 to 77, it turns out that eagles don't have to spend additional energy to thermoregulate. It's their baseline level of energy. Above 77, eagles have to spend more energy to thermoregulate. The higher the temperature, the more energy required. The reason that can be an issue is because they're panting. They might be holding their wings down or their feathers ruffled to cool their bodies, but they're also using additional energy to do that. This means that they need additional food, both for energy and for the water content to combat dehydration that's produced by panting and other processes. During this heat wave, Sol and Luna are way above the thermal neutral zone, represented by the green shading. You'll see they're up into those warmer temperatures and the warmer colors that I have depicted. When the heat wave starts around the 4th, there are 11 consecutive days with maximum temperatures over 95 degrees, including 6 days that range from 103 to 107. We also know that Sol and Luna have very little shade, so they're additionally warmed by solar radiation. That's why this is such a big deal. Sol and Luna never got relief from the heat for about 11 days. We think that's why Luna left the nest early on the 11th of June. We know that Luna was drinking from the river once she got on the ground. Sol died on the 14th and Luna died on the 16th. Now let's take a look at all of the data points together. Here's how I've constructed a timeline to show all of our data in one place. First, the yellow area there shows you the area with the day in the month, and the dates will be highlighted. The second area is our temperature zone. You can watch on any particular day or date ranges to see what the temperatures are. The third area is in the upper left. That shows the status of where our birds are, whether they're in the nest or on the ground. The fourth area is in the top center. This shows images of what the birds look like during a date range. Finally, the fifth area on the upper right shows the date range, the temperature range, and an indication of what the necropsy reveals about Luna during that timeline. Let's start with the early days, which is actually the end of May and the beginning of June. This is before the heat wave. Prior to June 4th, you'll see in the pictures in the center, even though the eagles can self-feed, I think that's Liberty feeding one of the eaglets. You do see some signs of relaxed wings. They must have been thermoregulating. You also see some signs of full crops. There you'll see, I think, Guardian bringing in a fish. To me, it seemed that food supply seemed adequate, but I did not make a log of that at the time. The eagles seem active, at least to me. They're flapping and branching, and to me, I don't see signs of illness in the birds prior to the 4th of June. That is my opinion. If you saw things differently during that timeline, please let us know by leaving a comment on the video. Now we move on in the timeline, and you'll see that the dates June 4th through June 10th are highlighted. These are days 1 through 7 of the heat wave. Temperatures range between 95 degrees, and 107 by the end of the week. That's way, way above the thermal neutral zone. And now the eagles are forced to spend more energy to thermoregulate. I noticed that the birds became less active. That's my recollection. And at times the wings were drooping when they were branching. The necropsy does not have a timeline. However, I think during this first portion of the heat wave, we can perhaps assume that the onset of heat stress may have led to issues such as early stages of dehydration, lethargy, and other systemic issues, as revealed by the necropsy, getting worse and worse by the day as the heat wave continues. It's at the end of this first week of the heat wave when things get dire. Up until the 10th, Sol and Luna were both together in the nest. June 11th arrives, and this is a pivotal day. It's 107 degrees out as the maximum temperature. Sometime during the day, Luna leaves the nest. Nobody witnessed that because the camera was down briefly. The observation in the necropsy states that she left the nest prematurely because her pectoral muscles were underdeveloped. The necropsy also states that she might have broken her wing on the way down, perhaps striking branches, and the injury might have occurred as she struck the ground. There's no way to tell that for sure, but it sure seems plausible to me. Also indicated by the necropsy, it sure seems plausible that here at the end of this first week of the heat wave, that the effects of heat stress have probably affected both birds, Sol and Luna. Sol is now alone in the nest as captured here by ground crew member Mike. Luna is on the ground next to the river, and this again splits probably what happened individually to these two birds. Now Luna has the opportunity to drink from the river and get out of the sun, which she was observed to do. Sol does not have those opportunities. Now we move to June 12th and 13th. The high temperature on the 12th was 107 degrees for the second day in a row. It dropped to 97 degrees on the 13th. These are days 9 and 10 of the heat wave. Luna is on the ground and Sol is in the nest. My recollection is that Sol appeared weak and maybe lethargic. That's my recollection. This late in the heat wave, it's likely that both eaglets were being greatly affected by heat stress. It's my opinion that dehydration was probably a greater factor with Sol in the nest because he didn't have the river to drink from. Yes, food was being brought into the nest, but I don't recall how much food. Was it enough to counteract the effects and to enable Sol to have more water content from more food? I just don't know. Luna was down on the ground and she was seen drinking from the river. So at that point, she did have a water source as well as shade. One other item of important note is that both Liberty and Guardian were seen perched in an area near where Luna was seen on the ground. The necropsy states that Luna was in good nutritional condition, and it's possible that Luna was eating up until her last day. We just can't know for sure. We move now to June 14th, indeed a sad day. This is day 11 of the heat wave. Luna is on the ground and Sol is in the nest. Sol appears to have little appetite despite confirmed food in the nest. He appears weak, stumbles, and has little to no droppings. Sol eventually nestled down in the nest and passed away the morning of June 14th. Rest in peace, Sol. Later that day, Luna was seen on the shore of the river and again was drinking. Now we move to the last 2 days, June 15th and 16th. Tragically, the heat wave broke too late for our 2 precious eaglets. Temperatures during these days have dropped to 87 to 88. Luna is on the ground. She cannot fly due to a broken bone and weak pectoral muscles. Those issues were discovered during the necropsy. The necropsy also states that Luna's stomach contains scant vegetation. Based on my research, it implies that she did not eat for at least 6 to 12 hours before her death, and we don't know how long in addition to that. Luna is last seen and dies on June 16th. Yes, very sad. Rest in peace, Luna. I'm going to provide a case summary based on the facts you've heard, but I want to make sure that you know that this is my opinion and was not included in the necropsy. Here's what I believe. Luna and Sol lived along a very similar timeline and died likely due to very similar causes. They were exposed to the same conditions in the nest up until June 11th when Luna left. Sol died first, 2 days sooner than Luna, possibly because he had no shade or water in the nest. Luna sustained a broken wing at some point, presumably as she left the nest on June 11th. As noted by the necropsy, exposure to prolonged heat and solar radiation can induce heat stress, which can also lead to dehydration and multi-system organ strain. It seems to me that Luna might have reached a point of no return from systemic damage related to heat stress, despite having access to shade and water for her last 5 days. In these ways, I believe that Luna's death and necropsy also tie into Sol's death. This has been a very sad situation, but now I think we know the truth. As we come to the end of the video, I'd like to take the opportunity to remember Sol and Luna. As an Eagle community, I think our hearts are still a bit heavy with the loss of these 2 beautiful eaglets. I think their story teaches us about the natural world, things like beauty, resilience, joy, hope, and grandeur. So, to Sol and Luna, we say, rest in peace, little ones. Your memory will inspire us to appreciate the beautiful creation in front of us each day. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you have comments or questions, please drop them below in the comments section. I will do my best to answer them. Until next time, my friends, be safe and be well.